because that's where the real clarity comes in, when you have a moment to breathe and take the whole thing in and be able to reflect and move from an idea that may be, rolling through your mind as you're climbing in the dark to the top, and then be able to sit with it. That's the real summit experience.
Hello and welcome to Center for Victory's podcast of Your Best Day Yet. At Center for Victory, we're here to help unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. My name is Kolb, and I am here with Matt Walker. It is great to have you. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited to interview. When I found out that we were going to be interviewing you, I was like, hey, can I do this one? Because as soon as I read through your website, I was like, this very much aligns with kind of our mission, vision, values. So it's an honor and pleasure to talk to you, Matt.
Thanks, Caleb. Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation, and our worlds overlap, and really curious and open to see what we can where we can go in the next hour.
Absolutely. So I guess even before I start kind of digging in and asking questions, can you give us a little background of just what you do? I know you're a psychologist, you're an adventure guide, and really tying those together, and just kind of a summary of your role now and maybe how that started.
Yeah. The short version, I'll try and give the short version as best I can. I'm a father of two. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been running my own shop for a little over 16 years now. I am a mountain guide by trade, which I've been doing now since I'm 48 years old, and I started when I was 18. So I guess that's almost 30 years in the mountain climbing industry. And so I'm a mountain guide by trade, focused on the 7 summits, guiding trips all over the world. And I'm a psychologist by education. And so I have a master's degree in psychology, and focus specifically on high performance leadership. And I connect those two worlds together. So I connect the lessons learned from adventuring and applying them to a personal and professional development space. And that's through writing, through coaching, through consulting, keynote delivery, and then also leading expeditions out in the field. So a little bit of a little dabble in all of it. I think of myself as I've got a niche that I follow, and I have a difficult time sitting still. So
Yeah.
if I'm just doing guiding, then my brain's working too hard, and I want to get into the mental cognitive aspects. And if I'm just coaching and consulting, then I have the itch to go outside. So I try to keep myself sane by having a foot in a couple different places at the same time.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, it is exactly kind of we were talking before we started recording, like Eric, who owns Center for Victory, he's a psychologist by trade, and I'm more in the adventure space. And so this is kind of like everything blended together here, talking with you. So you said you started mountaineering when you were 18, is that right?
Started guiding when I was 18.
Guiding
Yeah.
when you're 18. So what first kind of led you towards the wilderness? When did what was the moment that you're like, all right, I need to turn this passion into a career?
Well, I began I grew up in New Jersey.
Okay.
So I did not grow up backpacking and climbing and that sort of thing. I didn't grow up in a family that was a big camping family, um, but I had friends and friends' parents who were involved in that, and they started showing me, going on trips with them. And then myself and my buddy would go off and on a trip in high school on our own. And it was a, massive learning curve, tons and tons of mistakes. Um, Around that time, I took an outward bound course in the winter up in Maine.
Yeah.
And then I just got hooked. It was the first time I had experienced really deep teamwork and camaraderie, combined with the awareness that there was no easy out. I couldn't just pull the plug and take my things and go home. I was committed. And so that feeling, even though it was really hard for me, I was not in the best shape for it, mentally taxing and challenging. It put me in a place that I had never been before. And so I craved more of that, and basically just went as deep into it as I could, as quickly as I could. And ended up in Washington State for undergrad, and that's where things and fell into a mentorship opportunity, and it just took off from there.
And there's a lot more outdoor recreational opportunities in Washington State than New Jersey, I'm sure.
There are, yeah, significantly. The biggest
Yeah.
part of it for me was being in community, honestly. I didn't know, and being young and naive, I didn't know what would be what was normal or what was out of the ordinary, or I didn't know what to say no to or what to say yes to. And I just kind of I was in community where there was mentorship, and I went along for the ride. And thankfully, I had great people around me that created opportunity, and I said yes as much as I could.
Yeah. So then, so you graduated. Were you guiding that entire time while you were in school as well?
Yeah, I was guiding during the summers. I was working for a local guide service in Washington State, and then I was working for Outward Bound and Knowles National Outdoor Leadership School.
Yeah.
And then after graduating, then I went full time into it. So my first big mountain experience was between my junior and senior year of college. I went and guided down in Aconcagua, and that was the first
Ah,
big opportunity to jump straight into it. And yeah,
yes.
I was hooked.
That's awesome. That Aconcagua is on our bucket list. Actually, my wife and I was at an event last week, and it was at this winery, and the guy that owned the winery, uh, he was telling me about the vineyard that they get their wine from,
Right.
and so I was like, "How far is that from Aconcagua?" He's like, "Oh, it's about an hour and a half." And
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
trying to get people to come out to their winery for trips, and I wanted to climb Aconcagua. I'm like, oh, we got to stay in touch
a little
because
combo.
yeah, do a little combo here.
That is a beautiful place. If I don't think I've ever seen more dramatic sunsets and cloudscapes than in that area of the world. It's really powerful. It's a very
That is
unique place.
really cool.
Yeah.
And I know, I mean, just looking through through the website and the adventures that you go on, one that's really close to my heart is Mount Kilimanjaro. And my wife and I have done Kili four times each, and we got engaged at the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro.
Oh,
We got married at Camp 4 at Karanga Camp on the mountain. We did our
yeah.
anniversary on the mountain. So
Huh.
I really love Kilimanjaro, and the guys that we work with there, and I'm sure you do as well. We use the same guys every year, so we've gotten to know, we've gotten to know their families. Khalifa is our tent guy. Daniel is our cook. Bobo Ali handles the toilets, and it's like so we've got a chance to. Really spend a lot of time with them. I'm friends with them on WhatsApp, so we stay in contact throughout the year. And just every time I get the opportunity to go to Tanzania, it's like almost this reunion of
It's
being
a
being with
it's
these
a
guys
really
again.
special place. I've been going there now, I guess the better part of 25 years or so. And
Yeah.
at this point, I'm going on average once a year. There was a time when it was
Okay.
twice, once a year now. And just went this past a couple months ago. Our next
Yeah.
trip is at the end of the year. I think we've got 9 seats sold, a couple more left. But the thing with Kilimanjaro that is so powerful for me is what you touched on. It's a non-technical climb.
Hmm.
It is taxing and challenging. Summit day is just like summit day on any mountain in the world. It's a lot of work on
Yep.
the uphill, and it's a lot of work on the downhill. It's not a gimme. Um, it does. People think, oh, it's just a hike. You don't, it's not that technical. But the Kilimanjaro experience is the whole package. It's
Right.
to be I for it's I think for one of the rare trips that you can do, it's a blessing that it's non-technical because you get to be
Mhm.
in tighter community. You get to hike next to people and have deeper conversations. You get to be in contact and in relationship with local culture and meet people and it is I have seen more transformative experiences on Kilimanjaro than on any mountain in the world, but without a
Yeah.
question, in terms of
Absolutely.
community, kind of introspection of self, kind of rejigging of values and actions. People come off that mountain with clarity. On top of that, the digital detox opportunity of just
Yes.
saturating that environment. The whole thing is a whole package. And people are, oh, tell me about the hiking part. I'm like, that's just one portion of the entire experience. It's
Yeah.
I can't say enough about it. I think it's a really powerful place to be.
So I want to get back. That's a good transition to the digital detox. I want to talk about that because I know that that's something that's so powerful. Like for me, like I look forward to going to being without my phone, even if it's 3 days. Like this past week, we were in Dolly Sods. There's no service in Dolly Sods, and I look forward to not having my phone with me. But one thing about Kilimanjaro, I think there's what I experienced. I remember I was running sweep this day, so I'm in the very back, like behind all of the clients, and I remember we do the Machame route, and it was after the Bronco Wall, and so we're above the clouds, and so
Right.
you're looking out, and it's almost like you're at the beach where the clouds are the ocean, kind of rolling in underneath you, and I was kind of I was behind everyone, and I'm just looking at all the clouds rolling in, and I remember like it was such an awe-inspiring moment that I was like, this is the best job in the world. Like I
Mm.
am so at peace doing this. I'm so happy doing this. And I think it puts a lot of things into perspective. And the one other time, I mean, I've had this kind of that moment um, a little bit on every trip, but another time I was in Nepal and we were going from, you go from town to town and going through Namche Bazaar. And I remember seeing these women that were picking up the yak pies,
Done.
and they're
Yep.
laying them out to dry
Yeah.
in their yard, and
Fuel.
that's what they're using for fuel. And so then now 2 days later, I'm climbing, Jumar Isaacs, and I'm like I'm breathing, and in my mind, I'm like, it puts things into perspective where I remember being stressed out about an email that like I had to
Mm.
have this like kind of confrontation back home and thinking like none how little that matters when you take into the perspective of like,
Yeah.
these
The
just it just puts so much into perspective, and it was just another one of those like awe-inspiring moments where it really is rocket fuel for being grateful.
yeah, I'd love to expand on that because I don't have a judgment as to whether this is good or bad. I just accept that this is.
Yeah,
And from there, and then I'll explain what I mean in a second, but from there, it really solidifies the importance of adventure. So
yeah,
our lives, the story you just told about your experience in Nepal, I think is a perfect um, mirror for how we move through the Western world, which is with very
hmm,
little connection to the earth specifically, and that our challenges that we face are manufactured. It's not to say they're bad, but they're manufactured. And for the most part, if we're not in a true emergency situation, we have access to power, water, heat,
right,
climate controlled. We've got clothing, we have food available, and when those basic needs are met, um, we can our approach to living becomes we become really soft. And
yeah,
we lose touch with what truly matters because we are accustomed, like we are hardwired to be in survival. We're hardwired to create safety and security, whether it's through shelter and food and tribal protection. We're hardwired for that. And so when those are
yeah,
removed, we have to fill that space, and we fill that space in a manufactured way. And as humans, we create businesses, we create systems, we create technologies, all sorts of things that we create that are manufactured. Now, manufactured isn't good or bad. It's how we apply our perspective. When you're and we but we lose that connection and thread. And so as such, the email becomes just as important as going on the hunt. The email becomes
Right.
as important as fixing the roof with the leak.
Yep.
Um, and so going back out into adventure, breathing heavy, seeking challenge and stripping down to the bare essentials pulls us back into what is a core part of who we are as humans. And as a result, you get that clarity. You get the clarity as like, well, what truly is important here? It's not
Right.
the email, it's the relationship, it's the how I show up at home with my family, it's what am I in service to? How can I the the thing that I kind of come back to constantly on this is if there's a thread that passes through all of these experiences and moments of clarity, that thread is how can I decrease the suffering of others?
Mm.
I mean, if you think about like when people come off these experiences, the clarity they're looking for is how can I decrease the suffering of others? How can I create more satisfaction in my own life? And how can I show love and appreciation? I mean, those three things. It's just that is the core of
Absolutely.
how we want to experience the world as humans. And adventure just cuts through the noise and gets there so directly. So
Yes,
that's what keeps
absolutely.
me back there. Yeah.
And I experience this a lot. One of our trips that we do is, and I just K2, the company that I had guided for, they do a Grand Canyon rim to rim trip every year,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I think that is like the single best. Like one day we do North Rim to South Rim, North Kaibab to Bright Angel Trail. We do that in one day, and I think that is like you said, that is the single best way to experience this, because what I say, what I tell everyone, and it's kind of cliche until they actually experience it, is
Sure.
like the person that goes in the canyon and the person that comes out of the canyon are two totally different people, and you don't you don't realize that until you go and you put yourself through these challenges. And so for like me, for as a guide, is that's really why I like to do it, because I like to just be a cheerleader on that journey of helping people through that, and watching that transformation, because like a typical mountain, you start going up, you summit, and then you go
Right.
downhill. With the
Right.
canyon,
Right.
you go down first. You've been hiking for, when you get to Phantom Ranch, and you head up like through the corkscrew, and then you start going up, and now it's the end of the day, and now is the hard part. And so just watching clients get through that and then finish, and their teams there, and everybody, we're big, more cowbell is one of the values at Center for
Right.
Victory.
I've
And
seen
so
that.
there's
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
ringing the cowbell, cheering for the team, and just witnessing that transformation in people, I think is so
I, I like
exciting.
to think about it in terms of people are very summit focused, right? On climbs and adventures. Like, but
Yeah.
for me, the summit is typically the day after. So, because that's where the real clarity comes in, when you have a moment to breathe and take the whole thing in and be able to reflect and move from an idea that may be rolling through your mind as you're climbing in the dark to the top, and then be able to sit with it. That's the real summit experience. And but you're spot on. It does sound cliche that you're the same person that goes in is not the same person that comes out,
Yeah.
but that's the beauty of experiential learning, is that you have to literally experience it. Otherwise, it's just words on a page, or in this case,
Yeah.
words in a podcast.
Sarah's got this thing down to an art.
Let's go. And I wanted to talk about, just like you were saying, the digital detox and unplugging. And I know, just for me, how important that is. And even, you know, our family. We had somebody close to us had passed away, and I was sitting out by the fire in my house, and I was like, I need to I need to go for a hike. And so I asked my wife if she'd drop me off on the Rachel Carson Trail, and she's like, "How long are you gonna be gone?" I was like, "As long as it takes," And I called her like 12 hours later to come pick me up, and I just felt so much better. I did not bring my phone, headphones, anything. It was just me being alone and reflecting. And I think one other thing that I've experienced, and I noticed, I was talking about this when I got back from our most recent backpacking trip, is like, I think a lot of people, they go from Monday morning, wake up, and it's a grind, and a lot of business owners, there is no weekend. So it's this constant one thing to the next thing to the next thing. We're constantly plugged in, we're constantly running, and there is very little time if you don't cognitively put that into your schedule to kind of just sit back and reflect and have time with yourself. And so I know that for me, that's so important. Every time that I have that opportunity, I am very grateful. But I wanted to kind of hear your perspective on, the digital detox and benefits.
Yeah, this is an unexpected turn in my own work. I coach individuals through through life transitions. I'll just put it that way. Through whether it's business, personal, marriage, kids, midlife feeling of that midlife crisis, whatever it is, midlife transitions. I coach people through transitions, individually and in group settings. And this is like, as I mentioned, this is unexpected. I noticed in my coaching work and in the field running adventures was the impact of digital addiction and distraction, and then the amount of space and time needed to emerge from that. And I am just as guilty as everyone else in this process of like, it is a slow burn, but then it becomes insidious as to how connected and tethered we are to a device, how connected and tethered we are in a way that impacts how we think, critical thinking, our own creative process, and most importantly, how we're present with those around us. Just put your phone in your pocket for 20 minutes and walk around in a public space. You will likely be the only person whose head is not tilted down and into their own little personal TV.
Right.
And it's pretty shocking sometimes to experience that. So I noticed this was a problem and that it was a recurring issue. And so I started to figure out, okay, how can I support this emerging challenge? One way I did it initially was on adventure experiences. I had everyone leave their phones behind and brought a professional photographer on board. So the photographer would document the entire thing. So no one had the excuse of, I need to bring it so I can take a photo. So, we had satellite communication devices for security and safety.
Yep.
And then we had a photographer. So there was actually no reason to have your device at all.
Right.
That was the first step. And then I started realizing, well, we need this more frequently in our lives. So I started running these no-fee deep work sessions where I would facilitate via Zoom a work session where someone could come in and just focus on one task at a time. And so we'll have 30 or 40 people dial up, say what their task is, and then for an hour and a half, I'll facilitate the session, and they just do that one thing. And people are just like this relief of, oh my God, I procrastinated on this thing for months, and it only took me 40 minutes. Or
right.
I've been pinged back and forth and distracted by all these other pieces. I just need to focus on doing this one thing, and the relief that comes from that. So I started working with that and figuring out, okay, how to support this. How do we support being in a relationship with both at the same time, to not be a Luddite and just ditch the phone, but actually create a different relationship. And I also now, use an analog system that I brought online just this past week. That is a tool that people can actually use in their daily life for tasking, for note taking, for gratitude development, and for charting wins, that fits in their pocket or even in their phone case, so that analog, and you don't have to like literally think through the application of using your phone and the power of pen to paper. So I'm pretty fired up right now on bringing this aspect into my own coaching work with clients and into the adventure space, is like seeing this, the unintended consequence of the digital is that we're more and more tethered into the device and less connected to the world and to those around us. And adventure opens it up, and then so does also, I mean, ironically, is pulling back into using analog tools.
Yeah.
So that's it's a big part of my life right now.
And it's funny. Like, did you ever get the screen time notifications? Like, you've been on your screen.
They're
Like,
sobering.
it is like, it is sobering. Yeah. And it's interesting how, the idea of pulling away from this, it's not rocket science, but it's very profound of like its impact on you.
Well,
And
yeah, and
that's
I think
really
the irony is like we all know it. Every
right.
single one of us knows that we're addicted to these things, and yet it is so so hard to break this addiction. I mean, it's it's insidious. It really is. And I'm a huge proponent of technology, and I'm also a proponent of humanism. So we have to figure out a
Right.
way to get these two worlds together and be able to to shift our relationship. It's the wave has just crashed. I call it a digital deluge because we're so inundated. I'm about to go on a vacation with my son for spring break, and I would love. He's 11 years old. We're going to go watch a bunch of football matches in England, and I would love
Awesome.
nothing more than to just be as 100% present with him as possible. In the process of setting up this trip, um, so many of the benchmarks that for access to games, for hotels, for travel, all these different pieces are tethered back to the phone. So
Mm-hmm.
even with my desire to like just be fully present, I'm still going to have the phone and be pulling it out and engaging with it. There'll be errors made, there'll be mistakes, and I'll have to sit through it and work with them. I'm going to have to say, hang on to my son, like I need to figure this out. It's
Right.
going to be an issue. And I was like, how much time to the device? And yet, there, it's not going away. So we have to
Right.
figure out a way to be able to integrate it in a way that doesn't just take over our lives.
So I agree 100%. And I think it's really impactful that you're implementing into like the coaching and the adventures. So when did you start your company of transitioning from just the adventures to the helping people transition and the coaching and the
Yeah.
all the other aspects that you're doing?
So about 15 years ago, 16 years ago.
Okay.
So I at that time I'd finished graduate school in psychology. I had worked in a traditional therapy role, and I I essentially worked kind of every role I could possibly have worked in the outdoor guiding space, and had owned a guide service, went back to school, and then realized there's a way to bring this together. Um, Kudos to Outward Bound and National Outdoor Leadership School and these programs for running such robust, powerful programming, but they're typically 25, 30 days long. And
Right.
that's virtually impossible for 99.9% of the population to take advantage of. It's such a
Right.
huge chunk of time. So I took the question I sat with was, how can I take the learning and the powerful experience, the summit experience, the life-changing kind of power of those adventures of 30-day experience, and how can I offer that in 3 days?
Right.
Is it even possible? And so specifically to a professional development world, how can I implement a program that empowers a shift in leadership, either personal leadership or within an organization, and do it in a really short period of time. And so that's where I came up with specific programming that is high touch. So it's a low guide to client ratio, usually 2 to 1, if not 1 to 1 for a lot of programs. So even in groups, it may still be 1 to 1 with the guiding aspect, so that the experience is customized to that person's fitness level and to that person's technical ability. So we could share a base, and then shoot off and do different things that are specific to that individual. And in 3 days, can you take someone from showing up with a duffel bag with their gear, not knowing how to use it, and then 3 days later doing something that is one of those holy shit epic bucket list I never thought that possible experiences. And it turns out you can do it. So that's where it started. Yeah.
So you said typically you have like a 1 to 1 or 1 to 2. How big are your trips, typically with clients and guides? And for your guides, I assume that's a lot of education for a guide to go through and learn the kind of psychological aspects and coaching of, in addition to the technical mountaineering skills.
I worked hard to cultivate a team that had a similar approach. I would take the role as facilitator or instructor on a certain material, and then they would help implement it. When I first started, we were doing retreats with 6 people. That would be 2 to 1. And those first ones were down in Arizona, Cochise Stronghold, and in Joshua Tree, those areas, and the Grand Tetons, and then up in the Cascades as well. And then it's, kind of grew a little bit more, and we would get maybe 10 or 12 people at a time. And for those, they'd be less technical in nature, maybe climbing the volcanoes in Mexico or a Kilimanjaro expedition, things like that. Mount Baker up in the Cascades, glacier climbs. But when it comes to the technical aspect, it would be a smaller ratio. So the ratio changes depending on the technical ability. But in terms of the training and the facilitation, it was both. I felt it was really important to touch on 3 things. One, the cognitive aspect. So there would be like a teaching experience, a reflection aspect. So for the individual to be in deep reflection, and then in a group setting, they could share and learn from others. And then third is the experiential, to tie it all together. And so it just kind of became the order with which these programs would roll out. And people would leave at the end of these programs. They do leave exhausted, but because we're going to push all the way to the end. Whether it's sometimes they're camping based, which is new for a lot of people, and then sometimes they're held at resorts or spas or Airbnb retreats with catering and creature comforts. So it really just depends on the audience and what their goals are.
Oh, I love learning about this, because it's kind of like we had just met, right before we started recording. And it's just so exciting just to think of like the things that Eric and I talk about and how, there needs to be these opportunities. And it's like, oh, well, Matt's been doing this for 15 years. And that's so exciting. I think too, because you said a lot of your clients are going through a transitional phase. And I know like the midlife crisis gets a bad rap, but you really refer to that as an opportunity, right? Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the midlife crisis gets a bad rap because it gets wrapped into like, blowing a bunch of money on a sports car or, kind of a cartoonish examples. But the midlife crisis, which, it may sound cheesy, but I really do reframe it as a midlife opportunity, is a completely natural occurrence. It happens to everyone. And the root of it is that by the time you have reached a level of either age or professional success or comfort, there hasn't been an opportunity to pause and reflect and naturally transition into the next stage of life. Instead, we're still applying the desires, interests, goals that brought us to that point. So you basically, I mean, the short version is you're taking the mindset from your 18 to 25-year-old brain, maintaining that in your 40s and 50s, and thinking that you're going to get the same result and that you're the same person. And it causes massive disruption. And so often people blow up their lives. They blow up relationships, they blow up friendships, they blow up their professional trajectory, they blow up their finances, whatever it is. And all that the work that I do at this point is just to take a step back and assess, get some clarity on communication, have difficult conversations with those that you're with, and then shift. But these shifts actually don't have to be, 180 degrees. That's where people, because the pain becomes so great, they're like, I have to have a pain relief. I have to act out in some way just to like feel alive again. When it's actually with the intentionality and a little bit of perspective and guidance and wisdom from another source, whether it's me or a community or in a network or a mentor, whoever it is these slight shifts. The challenge I find in transition work, whether it's midlife, vocational, whatever it is the drive for individuals to do it in isolation, secrecy, and by themselves, as opposed to taking the risk of having what can be perceived as difficult or uncertain dialogues, and then letting that emerge and doing it in relationship with others. It's when we try and do it by ourselves that we get this massive pushback and shame from others. So
this is perfect. So for the guy that's listening, maybe is stuck in a rut with family, work, demanding job, you had talked about not doing a monumental shift. What's one small practical step that this person could take today to inject adventure or just kind of transition into his life and routine?
Yeah, I would actually say this can sound paradoxical to what I just said a moment ago, but I would actually say do something for yourself that you like. But the caveat being, have an understanding as to why you're doing that thing. So choose something for yourself that you like and that brings you satisfaction. I'm careful to say satisfaction and not happiness. That brings you satisfaction.
That's a good caveat. Yeah,
and make sure that it's in alignment with your values, and do more of that. And then start to dive into the topic and work. But the very first thing is literally take a step back and do something for yourself that you enjoy. I have a client that his baseball season is starting up, and the very best thing that he can do for himself, because he redlines a lot.
Yeah.
The very best thing that I know that he can do for himself is to take himself, he lives in Baltimore, is to take himself to a Baltimore Orioles game and just sit and watch the game.
Yeah.
Like it sounds, it's not going to climb Kilimanjaro. It's not going to Nepal. It's literally go to the baseball game and just sit and allow yourself to enjoy that and be able to take a breather. Like that would be my very first thing I would say is look at your calendar, and I guarantee you that there's not enough space in there for you to do things that actually bring you satisfaction.
Yep. That is that's great. I love that. So, looking ahead, what's your next project? I know you had talked about 3x5 and is there, can you tell us more about your next project, next adventures, what you've got coming up in the pipe?
So, the next big project that I'm working on right now is 3x5life.com. And it's tapping into what I was speaking about earlier, which is this digital detox and how to do it in an analog way. So I'm really psyched about bringing that out into the world. It's a tangible application, a tangible product that you can actually do in your daily life, as opposed to driving an app on your phone. So it's like the best productivity app, and it's not attached to your phone. So 3x5 Life is that, and I'm psyched to bring that out to the world. The beyond that, retreats in the Cascades this summer with clients, some that are open enrollment, some that are private, some stuff in British Columbia, Karsten's Pyramid, which is in Indonesia. We go in there in October, and then Kilimanjaro expedition in December. So
amazing.
all these different
That's
pieces,
exciting.
while still being a father and living my life and supporting those kids. So yeah, it's a full year this year.
I'm looking forward to having that, because for my wife and I, one of our most cherished possessions is the big calendar. Like Jesse Isler has that, like it's like a 4-foot calendar.
As we're talking about it, my eyes are going up. I'm actually looking at it right now.
Yes. All right. Yeah. So like that's one of my favorite things, at doing that with my wife at the end of the year, and planning these out and planning kind of the different, every 8 weeks we're doing something that we wouldn't normally have done. What's our misogi? What's my misogi, her misogi, and so I'm excited to have another tool to have and share. So that's exciting. And 3x5, that's live. You're live. You're up and running.
It's live. Yeah.
Let's go.
3x5life.com, and listeners can use the code adventure20 to pull 20% off, and it'll give you free shipping as well. So yeah, I'd be psyched to get that out the door to folks.
Let's go.
And then you can reach me at mattwalkeradventure.com or on Instagram at mattwalkeradventure. And yeah, I'd be happy to continue the conversation over there if someone's got questions or thoughts. And oftentimes I'll field questions or DMs that are really just about, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And it's not, it's not a sales call. It's just like, what's your perspective on this? How do you, I'm headed here for this conference. What kind of adventure experience would you imagine is possible in that environment? So I'll kind of throw out some ideas, and it's about relationship building.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So anything else that we're, you want to share before I let you go? I know you got another call here coming up, but I really enjoyed the opportunity to talk and learn from you. I think it's great for listeners to be able to reach out, talk with you directly. And is there anything else you want to share?
Thank you. The only thing I would just close with is, and I think it's come through in our conversation, is this idea of adventure, that adventure doesn't have to be going out to Kili or Nepal, right, or the rim to rim and the Grand Canyon. Like these are powerful experiences that you can have in your life. Absolutely. And the amount of learning and the impact is huge. But that adventure truly is a way of being in the world. It's how we show up in our relationships, in community, as parents, in our work. That adventure is how we engage with uncertainty and commitment. And it's that these experiences help us solidify and encapsulate that. But how we show up on a daily basis is adventure.
I love it. Absolutely. So I think that's a perfect place. I think, again, I really appreciate your time. Again, listeners, if you want more information, mattwalkeradventure.com, as well as Instagram, mattwalkeradventure on Instagram, 3x5.com. Definitely reach out. And 3x5life.com. I'm sorry, 3x5life.com. So, well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching and listening. If you'd like more information on Center for Victory, you can visit our website at centerforvictory.com. And remember, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, make this your best day yet. And we'll see you next time.